It's really similar to my journey with alcohol. And I think there's an underlying piece to all of this, which is when you commit to something and you show up for yourself consistently and keep promises to yourself, that starts to build self trust. And when you have strong self trust, the outcomes of that are limitless.
Hey everyone, welcome back. You are listening to the Pelvic Pulse podcast, and I have a special treat for you. We are sitting with Paige Calentino. She is a sober curious life coach, founder of the fast-growing online community Sober Caliente, and the creator of Becoming Her. Her signature 3-month framework for women who want to deprioritize alcohol, improve their mental and physical health, and manifest their dream life. Having walked this path herself, which we'll hear all about, Paige has made it her mission to make sure no woman has to figure it out alone. And damn, I'm so grateful to know you and be in community and connection with you in person and online. Paige and I met, when did we meet? Was this last summer? Or
Yeah, it must have been last May or June, I want to say.
yeah, yeah. So it's been over a year, and I feel like I've gotten to watch you leave corporate and really shine in doing your own thing. I got to be a part of your 30-day dry July challenge, and that's actually what kicked off a full on sobriety journey for me. And we can talk, I can share a little bit about what that's looked like for me, but I'm genuinely more so curious about hearing in depth your story.
Mhm.
And just another little backstory for the listener. Paige just finished the 75 Her challenge. And
Yes.
I find this little piece so fascinating about your experience and how 75 Hard was what you initially tried. And we can talk more about that later, but welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brittany. Thanks for having me. I've been
Of
looking
course.
forward to this conversation for so long. I'm just to be here.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, I feel like there's so much to cover because also, if you're not a part of Paige's newsletter, you tell, I think, the best stories. Um, I think they come out Fridays, right?
Friday mornings.
Yeah. And I just find it so, so fascinating to dip back into those moments, at least for me. Like my relationship with alcohol was so, I don't know, tumultuous, maybe strange, but never like crazy, crazy.
Mhm.
And though reading your stories will make me think about that and reflect on why I'm doing my life the way I'm doing it now and what a wild ride it kind of is, where like my background, my mom doesn't really drink. Like if she had a glass of wine, she'd mix it with Sprite
Oh,
and it's disgusting.
interesting.
My grandma's never had a sip of alcohol
Wow.
and her mom, and they don't like it. They don't do well with it. My dad will drink, and my aunt has, a glass of wine here or there.
Mhm.
And I feel like growing up, I I was exposed to it and it wasn't like a thing, but when I started drinking in college, it was, the college
Mhm.
try with it all. And you just have to go off the deep end sometimes. But I feel like the more I've gotten into health and wellness, it's taken me this long. Like I'm 36, been in health and wellness for a long time now, over a decade, I'd say. And it's now kind of hitting me how much alcohol without judgment. I like really want this to be more of a curious journey for the listener, especially if someone's still like a social drinker, but that's kind of where I went with it. It was like I went from being not even a heavy drinker in college, but definitely more than I ever did in my life,
Mhm.
and same in grad school, and it was just part of the culture.
Yeah.
But I'm such a light drinker now, and I didn't like spending money on it. That was my biggest hang up. I was like,
Mhm.
why is alcohol so expensive? And yeah, I've been a social drinker for mm, a long time after that. And finally, it was just this like kick in the pants that I needed. I've always done like a dry July or sober October. And doing your dry July was like, okay, and James too. Like we haven't had a drink in over a year together. Yeah.
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 Round of applause.
It, and to be fair, I think it felt easier than I thought it was going to feel.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, it's not like that. And I think you do a fantastic job of addressing those people because it sounds like maybe that was where you were at. But
Hmm.
can we start from as far back in the beginning as possible that you feel is relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. There's
Like,
so much.
how did you get here?
It started way back when I started drinking when I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
Like so many people did in high school, I wanted to experiment and try it out. And I started off with a bang. I think the first time I ever drank, I blacked out.
Yep. Yep.
So there's that. Um, yeah, I stole liquor from my parents' liquor cabinet when they went out to dinner. They were going to be home in 2 hours, and I decided to drink an entire bottle of black licorice liqueur with a few of my friends.
I feel very similar. I feel, yes.
So, of
Oh my
course, yeah,
God.
of course.
Goldschlager for me.
What happened with your first drink?
We mix that with these like blue ices,
Oh
like
my gosh.
shaved ice. And we
Ugh,
put the cinnamon flavored Goldschlager and put that in the blueberry icy thing. And we had that. I replaced the Goldschlager with water, put it back in the freezer, didn't know that it would
freezes.
freeze. And I remember just like my friends were sleeping over and when my parents were home. And so then when they came down and they had like we left our icy stuff on the countertop and my dad had come downstairs and I was like sneaking around the corner watching him and he literally took up the thing and he like sniffed it and he was like he made a really gross face like it was disgusting and then he threw it away and I'm like I'm pretty sure at that moment he knew, but he didn't say anything. Like no
Wow.
one, they didn't say anything to me about that. But when
Okay.
I started going to parties and I got drunk at parties and would throw up when I got home,
Yeah.
and my dad was like, Brittany, you know you can't drink. You know you're like your mom.
Oh my gosh, your parents sound so sweet.
They were really, yeah. My mom was livid the next morning, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it goes. And I think that's part of parenting is allowing your kids to discover what they need to discover in their own way, on their own timeline. And my parents were very gracious. That first event started a long few years of coming home and finding me too drunk, finding me throwing up, having to pick me up from parties. I mean, I definitely put them through it. I was a really good kid, other than that. Like, that was the only real issue that I had growing up, especially in high school, was having to deal with those drinking incidents. And at the time, it was very common. I
Mhm.
won't say it's normal because I don't think getting that drunk is normal, but it was very common, especially in my friend group and the area that I grew up in. It was just what we did. It was like how we had fun. It was how we met guys and socialized. We went to parties. It
Mhm.
was very much so tied up in that culture of high school partying and just kind of coming into our own as young adults. But unfortunately for me, that did not translate well to college because, as we know, the college environment is even more centered around alcohol. So when I finally had that opportunity to be on my own and be making my own decisions without having the watchful eyes of my parents, I definitely went off the deep end. And
Mhm.
I was partying hard in college. I would say, out of anyone I knew, I was one of the biggest party girls in my sorority, in my friend group. I was going out like 4 nights a week. And it wasn't ever like considered a problem. I never thought that I was an alcoholic or someone who needed to get help. I just thought I was cool.
Mm.
I thought I was a cool party girl in college. And I had tons of friends. I had lots of options when it came to guys that I was seeing. And it was just really, again, part of that lifestyle. But in college, we had these like themed parties. And especially being in a sorority, we were kind of hazed
Mhm.
in terms of drinking as well. It was like definitely pushed in my sorority. We were known to be the party girls. It was like the party girl sorority at my university. And we were invited to these frat parties like on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays, and they were all themed. And then we would have these like mixers, and especially going to SMU in Dallas, Texas, we
Hmm.
have a very interesting sorority and fraternity culture where, since we're so close to downtown Dallas, we would just all get fake IDs and we would go clubbing. And like the frat parties were not at a frat house. They were like renting out a club, and we'd have
Right.
tables and bottle service. So it was a very dangerous environment for a young person like me who got very excited when she got invited into a table where there was a giant bottle of vodka sitting there just ready for anyone to take.
Wow. Wow. Oh my God. I mean, I really resonate with the sorority experience and just it being celebrated
Mm-hmm.
even.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, our sorority, I was a Kappa Delta, I'm a Kappa Delta, and we were called the keg drainers.
KD.
Yeah,
Oh
Katie's. It's so ridiculous. But yeah,
my
going out all the time. I remember getting a fake ID, and this was when I had braces because I fractured my teeth at a frat. Um,
God.
and yeah, it was not good. It was not good. Um, yeah, the fake ID, getting out to the clubs or the bars, like going to UW, that's where I was in Seattle. And yeah, University District definitely had its fair share of places to do the same. Ugh,
Mm-hmm.
so crazy. Did you feel like in college there was, yeah, you said there was like no problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point did it feel like this is a problem now?
Well, there were many signs. There were many red flags
Tell us
throughout
the
the.
flags.
I
What?
didn't actually recognize it as a problem until much later, but something pretty intense did happen to me during college. It was a classic spring break story. I was in the Bahamas with pretty much the rest of my school. That was like the thing. We all went to the Bahamas, which is so ridiculous just in itself. Like, what?
Dude, it's so
It's
crazy. These are very mirrored stories. Like our school went to Cancun for spring
okay.
break, sophomore
Okay.
year specifically.
Yeah.
Why? I
hmm
don't know.
hmm That's so typical. It's like the big trip that everyone has to go on. You have to be there. You can't miss it. So I ended up going to this trip at the Bahamas. We're all staying at the same hotel. And pretty much like, I think it was the second night that I was there, I first got really drunk. So I was at a point where I was nearly blacked out.
Mm.
And then I got roofied. Mhm.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, it was horrible. I got roofied by a total stranger, not someone who was affiliated with my university, just someone else who was at the hotel. And I don't remember anything for a few hours besides waking up to basically falling slash climbing off the second store balcony of a hotel room. And it's even hard for me to talk about now, but it was so intense. Like I had this really instinctive reaction to just needing to escape. I
Whoa.
was like, I've got to get out of here. I have to get out of here right now. That's really all I remember. And I kind of came to recognizing that I was trying to escape a situation. And I had essentially climbed over the balcony and started climbing down what the kind of the rocks and things that were below there. And I remember looking down and slipping, and my hands started slipping from the rocks. And all that I could think was, oh shit, I am way too high up right now to fall. And the
Paige.
next thing I know, I'm hitting the pavement, and I just hear this really loud ring through my ears. And I remember thinking, like, I'm dying. This is what dying is like. And the next thing I remember, I was wrapped up in a ton of pool towels with blood just everywhere gushing around me, being so confused. And I was surrounded by strangers, people at the hotel who had just randomly found me laying on the ground in a pair of sticky boobs and a thong. And I had broken my right elbow and I completely severed the bottom of my chin, split it open, which is where all the blood was coming from. And it was pretty gory. I ended up in the hospital.
What the hell? How did you how did you move after that? Like what like that's a huge wake up call.
Hmm.
Did your friends like where were your friends? Like what was happening with all of that? Like I'm so how does one come out of the roofied state? And I mean, I'm so glad you got out of that situation. And yet also like I feel like every single time we see this portrayed in the media, it's like no one has physical control of their body after they're roofied
Hmm.
and they need to get like carried away, carried
Hmm.
out. But maybe that's before it wears off. Like how long do you think you were like in that room? Like I
I would say probably an hour or two
okay.
from being roofied to actually falling off the balcony. I'm not really sure of timelines because it was never investigated and I didn't press any charges. Um, I was so scared and confused. I just wanted it all to be over.
Yeah.
I wanted to just fast forward through time. And again, like I didn't remember much. Those were just a few moments that I could remember once I fully woke up, which was not until the next day, much
Mm,
later. So I was apparently transported to the hospital in an ambulance, which I don't remember any of that. I don't remember getting admitted. I don't remember getting into the bed. The next thing I remember, I wake up and it was the afternoon the next day, and my friends were there with me. They had found me and they had found out what happened. And they were sitting next to me, and I was asking them questions like, what happened to me? What is this? Where am I? And just being so scared and confused, especially being in a foreign country.
hmm
I had the nurses coming up to me asking me if I would like it to be investigated and if they'd like if I'd like the police to come and talk to me. And I said, okay, I would talk to the police. And once they came, I got really nervous and I was just feeling very vulnerable. I was in the hospital bed and the police were next to me asking me, hey, like what happened? Tell us like who it was. How did you meet them? And I just got so frazzled that I told them that I was fine. It was just my fault that I got too drunk and they didn't need to push any further. And so that's what they did. So they stopped. And I just kind of carried that with me. And for a long time, I felt, I felt very, I felt like it was my fault that, I did it. I was part of the situation because I got so drunk. And I will say, I definitely need to take responsibility for part of that equation because I was in a situation, I put myself in a situation where that was even possible.
mm,
But I think for a long time, I wasn't recognizing that there was another party involved, that, there was definitely, um, a lot at play. And I noticed too when I woke up and finally got back to the hotel room, a few days later, they had stitched up my chin and put me in a brace on my arm. I had noticed that all of my money had been stolen as well. So it was definitely not a consensual situation, I don't
mm,
think.
mm-mm,
So yeah, it was really
mm-mm.
scary. And that should have been the wake up call, right? Like,
Well,
how horrible.
if I've ever heard of a rock bottom, that may have been it. But are you saying it's not?
It was not. No, it was not. I went back to school. I went through a really hard time. I was never clinically diagnosed as being depressed because I refused to go in and to see a
Mm,
therapist.
mm,
So I was dealing with it all on my own. During that fall, I had actually severed one of my nerves in my chin.
Mm.
And this portion of my face was actually paralyzed. So I could not move anything in this portion of my face, meaning that when I smiled, only half of my mouth would go
Wow.
up. And when I talked, only half of the mouth would move.
Wow.
So I was incredibly embarrassed. Of course, like the entire school found out about this. So I was mortified, just so ashamed that it had happened. I ended up having to wear this full, like, bionic brace for 6 weeks on my elbow while my elbow healed. And all the meanwhile, I was still going to classes because I had too much ego and was too scared, I think, to admit that I needed more help. And my parents were urging me to come home, to stay home for this semester, talking about transferring, getting help. And I just didn't want to do any of it. I said I wanted to just get through it. I wanted to put my head down and just focus on school. And that's what I did. But I was definitely, looking back now and now what I know about mental health, I was certainly depressed during that time. I mean, I was sitting in my room by myself. I gained like 15 pounds. So it was really brutal. But once I started feeling better and I spent a few weeks kind of hibernating, I went straight back to it. I went back out to the parties, back out to the bars. I was drinking again, a little bit hesitant, I will say, at first, but eventually that wore off and I was kind of right back to where I was before.
And okay, so give me a little bit of this timeline so I can understand like when this happened, what year were you in school? And then at what point, graduation comes around? What was like, I feel like I'm also curious about how college culture gets transferred into corporate culture.
Mm-hmm.
So can you walk me through that timeline and like what did you do after the fact? Because like that, I'm honestly like I'm not surprised that you went back to it. Like, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people do that and almost maybe even to numb the sensation of depression.
Yes.
Was that what, like, when you look back, that's okay.
100%. Yeah, it was using it to numb all of that embarrassment, the shame, to not think about what happened and try and bury that memory as deep as I could and not have to think about it, which, as we know, is incredibly
Mm.
unhealthy to let those unresolved traumas fester. And unfortunately, that is what happened because I didn't address those feelings that were coming up at that time. So this all happened freshman year.
Mm.
This was my very first spring break. And then I went home for the summer after spring semester, and I really just reconnected with my friends from high school. I worked out every day, tried to lose that weight. Eventually, my nerve was healed, and I started to be able to use my full side of my face again, which I was so thankful for. And once that happened, I think I really started to move on. And again, I kept drinking throughout the rest of college, and graduation came around and I got this really badass job as a management consultant. And if you know anything about the consulting industry, it's a very heavy drinking culture. So I fit in great. It was like the perfect place to land for the mindset that I had around drinking.
It's so wild because every time I watch a show where it's like set in New York and it's like a lawyer or like a law firm and you take the clients out and you're drinking, like just keeping up with them. Even in freaking Seinfeld, they have an episode like that in the
Mhm.
baseball, like when he works for the Yankees, George, not Jerry.
Mhm.
But just trying to keep up with the clients and trying to keep up with like the fun of it, quote unquote. And I always say to myself, like, I never would have survived in corporate culture like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so walk me through the job. Obviously, something beautiful, shiny, new, and exciting
Mhm.
for a 21, 22-year-old to have a badass job that they're proud of.
Mhm.
Where was that? Was that still in Dallas?
Yeah, I was still in Dallas at the time. And that corporate culture really showed up in terms of socializing. And that's what it really revolves around in the corporate world, is connecting with your coworkers outside of the office it usually happens at happy hour. And so I would get so excited for these happy hours. We would have them, every other week. And we would have a chance to actually get to know our coworkers on a deeper level. And it's so sad. And this is something I hate so much about our society is like, why do we need to turn to alcohol in order to just open up and share a little bit more about ourselves and learn about the people in our lives? Like, it's not necessary. And now I know that we can do that on our own accord, or we can use other ways to connect and relate. But at that time, that was all that I really knew. And going back to my story, I started drinking at 14. That was truly the only way I knew how to make friends. And
Mm.
so for me, it was really important to show up at those happy hours and to be involved in the company events and the holiday parties and the quarterly events. Those quickly became my favorite parts about the job. And it's where I met a lot of amazing people, some of which I'm still actually friends with today. One of my best friends I met at that very first job out of college. And we laugh about it now because we both don't really, well, I don't drink and she doesn't really drink at all either. And so we laugh about those times. But yeah, it's really prevalent. And I think the thing that people don't notice too is leadership sets the tone. So if you have leaders within the company, whether that's the executives, the C suite, even just managers, if they are going out and drinking and that's the opportunity that they are presenting to you to get to know them, then
Mm.
that's going to become the company culture.
Mm.
And for so many organizations, that's just the precedent that has been set for generations. And that's just what we've all gone along with. And if the top of the organization is going to use alcohol in that way, that's how the rest of the organization is going to use alcohol. So I think it does really take some strong leaders to do things in a different way in order to start shifting this corporate culture. And I've seen it happen at different companies. I worked at a company for a while where there wasn't a big drinking culture, and that was directly tied to the leadership team being more of like a health and wellness mindset. But it's still
Mm.
not the usual.
Right, right. I do find that super, super interesting, and you're making me think of the companies that I am in connection with and who I've been in connection with for a long time and or in the past. And like that was definitely my experience too. Just whether it was happy hours or just like dinner and people getting drinks at dinner and or yeah, it's a big party, holiday party and all
Mhm.
the beers paid for, you know what I mean? And or like one drink is covered, obviously I'm not like a huge firm, I'm at like a smaller clinic, but yeah, when I've worked with people who the leaders are sober,
Mhm.
I I feel like that is definitely the trickle down effect is felt. And we
Yeah.
do things very, very differently.
Mhm. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so appreciated. And you're just making me think though about like the wedding culture too, which I definitely want
Mhm.
to like touch on later, a little bit later, but
Mhm.
don't let me forget to bring that up. But I definitely want to hear also because like we don't have to get into the nitty-gritties about the relationship stuff, but I know at the same time like right, being in relationships, being in like intimate relationships and then being in like the business world, all of that, at least from what I've read from your stories, kind of turned into this whole experience where you had to do a lot of change. Like you went through a huge metamorphosis, it seemed like. And I
Yeah.
don't think it all happened at once, but maybe it did. I don't know if you want to weave any of that in there, but
Yeah.
I just, yeah, I think because it did have an impact on your decision, right, to do something like 75 hard, which not everyone is going to say yes to 75 hard unless they really are sick of their own shit.
Mhm. Mhm.
At least that's my understanding.
That is exactly it. Yeah. I had this whole like experience in my early 20s where I was working super hard, playing super hard. That was just my lifestyle. I would work like 50 to 60 hours a week, and then I would go out on the weekends and just party. And I would drink to the point of blackout. That was not uncommon for me. And it was really fueled by the romantic relationship that I was in at the time. I was dating someone who was himself a glorified, bad boy, which to all the listeners, bad boys are going to be bad boys. So Not good. They're not good people sometimes. So he was drinking a ton. He was using a lot of recreational drugs. He was selling drugs low
No.
key on the side,
Oh.
um, which made it extremely easily accessible to me and to us. So we were using all kinds of stuff on the weekends.
Mhm.
Do you want me to share actually
Sure,
what? Okay,
if you
I
want
think
to.
it's appropriate. Yeah, so we were using cocaine on the weekends. It became kind of normal to us,
Mhm.
almost like having a beer. We would just do lines before we would go out. I'll just have a line or two. And it became so normalized. We were also doing Molly when we would go to music festivals. So, all kinds of stuff that was just fueling that um, culture of drinking and partying and staying out late. And we would have some nights where we would just go to a dive bar, but we wouldn't end up going to sleep until like 6 a.m. It was crazy. It
Wow.
was crazy. And that was just our lifestyle. And like we didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. And it
Right.
would literally take me like 3 days to recover from something like that.
I was just gonna ask you because like in your 20s, I feel like sometimes you can get away with stuff like that, but also if you're doing that on repeat, on repeat, on repeat, like how often are you, yeah, in recovery and experiencing the gnarliest hangover
Hmm.
ever? And it's like, yeah, for me now, if I were gonna go on a bender, I'd probably be out for a week, you know? Maybe
Yeah,
longer.
yeah,
But
totally.
yeah, yeah,
It
I feel
was,
like,
even though I was in my early 20s, it still hit me hard. I mean, I
yeah.
would bounce back, and that's why it became such a normal thing because I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, 3 days, I'm good. And that's kind of what I would always expect. Okay, the Sunday, I'm going to be an absolute pile of trash. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I won't wake up even until like 2 p.m. And then Monday's going to be super rough. I would have crazy, like, scaries about work and just existential crisis. And then Tuesday, I would like, okay, get back into my routine. I'd get my butt back into the gym. I would start eating healthy again. And then usually by Wednesday, I would feel good again. And that was kind of like the cycle that I was living on repeat. It was just like week after week after week. And a
Wow.
few years passed of doing that. I really started to see how it was damaging to myself and to my relationship. And not only was this man, incredibly bad influence on me, an incredibly bad influence on me, but he also was very manipulative. I definitely look back and recognize that he was the perfect example of a narcissist. He would just use me. He would be gaslighting me all the time. And we just had this really horrible relationship where I felt constantly alone, even though he was living with me. And I felt like he never really understood me or was thoughtful enough. And I certainly played a part in that relationship as well. I was incredibly passive aggressive to him. I would make little remarks here and there about things. And then I was the one who usually, when I had a few drinks, finally felt that confidence to stand up to him. And I would
Mm.
pick fights with him whenever we would drink together, which was like every weekend. So it was not great. It was a very toxic relationship. And it was long term too. We were together for 5 years, which made it even harder to be able to try and get myself out of that situation. And it started really eating away at me when I was around 24 or 25 years old. I started wondering, like, is this just what long-term relationships feel like? Is this
Mm.
just how it's always going to be? And I just want to go back to that version of me and give her a huge hug and just let her know that that is absolutely not okay and it's not normal. But I didn't know anything else at the time. And I had too much pride to open up about it to my friends. So I was always kind of putting on a front that we were great, everything was fine. And friends were worried about me. I had a few friends reach out to me and, express that they didn't think that he was a great partner. And I would take it. Sometimes I would get a little bit defensive, but I would always kind of brush it off. Although internally, I was thinking about it, and those comments were affecting me
Mm. Like you
until,
go
sorry, go
ahead. No, no, you go, you go.
ahead.
You're on a roll.
Yeah. So we had this horribly toxic relationship, and I was really just starting to see how it was detrimental to my own mental health. And I started seeing these couples around me, and we were at the time where people were getting married, especially in Dallas. People get married usually a little bit younger. And so I had other friends getting married from work, and I just would look at their relationships and think, wow, like they're so supportive for each other, and they have all these like very wholesome activities that they do together, and they just seem to have a different type of relationship than I have. And I started to kind of crave that.
Mm.
And I was almost wishing for something to happen so that we could break up. I was like
Mm.
hoping, because I knew that I didn't have it in me. I didn't have the courage to stand up to him and break up with him fully, just
Mm.
because we had such a long history. And I felt like there was so much time and energy invested that I didn't want to end it. But I secretly wanted something to happen that would almost force us to break up. And what do you know? I'm a master manifester. And it turns out that he was cheating on me for like 6 months. I found out through Venmo. I saw some transactions come through that looked a little fishy, and I did some girl investigating with some of my friends, and turns out he was dating another woman. She lived in another state. She was actually still in college, and it was undeniable. We got screenshots from their conversations. I mean, this like circle of
Whoa.
women who did research ran deep, and there were all sorts of connections. Like, it was just a really crazy story. So I found out, and I'm the type of person where I'm a Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio sun.
Love
So
a Scorpio. My husband's a Scorpio, and I'm a Scorpio rising. You're in good company.
yeah, okay, so you get it. I was like, all right, no more. I'm done with you. Like, this cannot go on. And we had a very clean break.
Mm.
Um, and that's really where things started to shift. That was, I would say, the start of my entire health and wellness journey, my sobriety journey,
Mm.
and really the start of my Saturn return, which is where things got very exciting.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, talk me through the Saturn's return because I also feel like just for anyone listening who doesn't know what that is, it's typically around like 27, 28, maybe even all the way into your early 30s through your Christ year, 33. And for some people, it sounds and feels like a complete life crumbling, shattering, like tower moment where you're, yeah, tearing everything down and you're rebuilding from scratch. I kind of feel like mine was ish like that. Also started with a breakup at, 28. And it started my whole different path in career.
Mhm.
So for some people, it also can feel actually really amazing and be like exactly what you needed it to be. And
Yeah.
yeah, Saturn has very masculine, like father energy that just kind of whoops you in.
Yep, that's definitely what happened.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell me, like, what was the after the relationship crumbled, which also it's like who you surround yourself with most makes such a huge impact on you. And if you're living with someone who is not a good influence for whatever reason, and now they're suddenly out of your life and not taking up as much space, it's like, oh my God, who are we filling that space with now? You know?
Mhm,
And what is the life looking like now? Like, what are you able to manifest in your life now?
mhm. Yeah, it was taking up way more space, both energetically and mentally, than I had realized. And once I had that space to reclaim and make my own, I at first I didn't know what to do with it. So, of course, what I did initially was fall back on the pattern that felt comfortable and felt normal, which was partying. And I really used that for a good year to deal with that grief and that pain from such an intense breakup. But it also allowed me this space to start figuring out who I wanted to be. Because at this point, I didn't know who I was as an adult on my own. I met this guy when I was 20 years old,
Mm.
and we had done everything together, and I had really grown codependent on the relationship. So when I finally had this chance to be my own person and do what I actually wanted to do, it really gave me a lot of freedom. So the first thing I did was move to San Diego. And
Hey.
I'm so excited. I am so grateful. I must say, I'm so grateful that that happened and it brought me here
Mhm.
because I really was craving a change of scenery. I wanted to create some distance between me and these past memories. And I think for a lot of people, having a change of scenery can be incredibly healing. And it allows you to test out new identities and try living in a different way where you're not surrounded by all these people who knew this past version of you.
Mhm.
So it really allowed me to step out of my comfort zone. And I moved to San Diego about 2 weeks before COVID quarantine lockdown happened here.
But of course.
Of course. So it wasn't a great time, but looking back, it kind of forced me to look at myself in the mirror and start to look at the habits that I had around alcohol because I was stuck at home in, a 500 square foot apartment with roommate. And all we did was drink and party to pass the time. And after a few months, I got really tired of that. I
Mhm.
was just over it. I had been doing it now for almost a year after the breakup. And I started to really crave more meaning and intention in my life. And so I started doing little things like trying to meditate and listening to more spirituality podcasts, getting back in touch with my intuition, getting into astrology. So all these like little things that started pointing me towards taking better care of myself and finding
Mhm.
more purpose in life. And eventually those things became so attractive that I started getting really fed up with my own behaviors. And for lack of better terms, I was really sick of my own BS when it came to drinking and blacking out and hooking up with guys and partying. I wanted a different type of lifestyle. I wanted to be proud of the person that I was and wanted to really live up to the potential that I knew I had within me. So once that spirituality started really growing and I had a better relationship with God and myself, I knew that it was time to try something dramatic. And that's when I had heard about 75 Hard. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this sounds gnarly, but I am here for it. I am ready. I am so tired of the drinking and the partying. What would happen if I gave myself a full 75 days to just do what I love to do now, which is the yoga and the meditation and working out and going on walks and journaling, listening to podcasts, and just fill my life with that. So
Mhm.
that's what I did. And about 40 days in, it hit me. It was very casually in a conversation where my roommate asked me, okay, so are you going to drink after this? Or like, where are you at with that? And I just said to her without even thinking really, no, I don't think I'm going to drink anymore. I don't really think it serves me. And both of us were like, whoa,
Surprise.
whoa, did I just say that?
Yeah, who said that?
Okay. I'm like, I guess that's what I'm doing. And once I kind of verbalized that, that became who I was.
Yes. The new identity manifested.
Yes, it emerged.
It emerged. It emerged. You became her. You became the girl that didn't drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I love that. I love all of that. And now, okay, love to hear more about your experience in 75 Her, which, I mean, if you're unfamiliar with 75 Hard, maybe you want to explain that and then how you decided to do your version of 75 Her, because not everyone's 75 Her journey looks the same. Everyone's at a different spot with their cycle and their connection to it. And if they're like learning it for the first time versus like they're inhabiting it more fully, um, or they're, yeah, recovering in postpartum. And just, there's so many different factors. So, will you walk us through that difference for you and how you felt after the 75 Her journey?
Yes, absolutely. So, for those who are not familiar, 75 Hard is a challenge for 75 days where you're doing two workouts a day. One has to be outside, no matter the weather condition. You're reading 10 pages of a nonfiction book. You are drinking a gallon of water. You're not drinking alcohol, so you're sober for the full 75 days. you're picking a diet of your choice, and you're taking a progress photo every day. So it's quite rigid, and it's meant to be that way. It's kind of a test of willpower and showing up for yourself and sticking to and committing to something, which I think definitely has its place and its time. But what I found interesting about that challenge is that it doesn't account for really anything related to women, whether that's your cycle, like where you're at in the month, your BMI, your body weight. So drinking a gallon of water is not actually appropriate for some people, me included, because I'm 5'3", and I shouldn't be drinking a gallon of water a day because you can actually drown yourself internally. So there's that. There's a few things that don't really match up. So when you had mentioned the 75 Her challenge, I was so excited to join because it was kind of like 75 Hard, but a much more inclusive space for women to focus on things that actually would feel good in our bodies and would match up to our cycles. And I loved the idea of learning more about my cycle too, because I had, I have a foundational understanding of the phases and kind of what cycle syncing is, but I had never paid more attention to it than that. Like I was tracking my cycle through an Aura ring, but I wasn't doing much about it. So what I loved about 75 Her was having that opportunity to notice more of my patterns during each phase, noticing the types of things that I was craving, whether that be type of movement or type of food and nutrition, and really getting specific on what's most supportive for me during those times of the month. And I loved having the community of other women to, talk things through and just read through the group text of all the experiences that people were having, especially women who are in different seasons of life, like you mentioned, postpartum, and just little like sneak peeks of what's to come for me. And I just love learning about that type of stuff too. So my intention going into it was really just getting more acquainted with my cycle and learning more about myself. In addition to that, I wanted to start incorporating more intuitive movement based on the phase. So instead of forcing myself to go into a HIIT workout during my luteal phase, I would instead do like a nice supportive Pilates class at home, or maybe I would just go on a walk. So it was focusing more on the intuitive movement piece, as well as just drinking enough water, staying hydrated, and trying new things. So I had committed to going to dance class, which we've been doing for a while now. And that's been super fun, just getting back into choreography. And I did cheer when I was in high school for a year. So I love that ability to learn new things and learn a sequence. So getting back into dance has been super fun. And I've also been swimming in the ocean once a week. So that's been amazing. And that's continued on after 75 Her too. So I just absolutely love the challenge. I think it was such a wonderful way to get back in touch with my body and my cycle. And now I'm feeling much more confident when it comes to my cycle and just understanding like what I need during each of the phases and what's going to help me feel my best and show up as the best version of myself.
Mm. Thank you for sharing all of that. I love it. I love it. I love it. It was so amazing having you in the group and um even like you sharing on one of the live calls that we did. And yeah, I I feel like when I reflect on 75 Hard, you're absolutely right. It's not built for women at all. And 75 Her is um definitely more inclusive for that female that wants the same kind of practice of devotion and self discipline and self love all at the same time. It's like the same breath. Maybe discipline feels a little too harsh for people, but devotion can feel like that. Um, it's like more of a sacred practice and understanding, like a self understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I, yeah, I'm really grateful that you were a part of that. And I'm so glad that you got more in touch with yourself and have been following your intuition into these different activities that seem to light you up from the inside out. I can feel that. And yeah, so good. It's so good. What were you gonna say?
I was just going to say that, it's really similar to my journey with alcohol. And I think there's an underlying piece to all of this, which is when you commit to something and you show up for yourself consistently and keep promises to yourself, that starts to build self trust. And when you have strong self trust, the outcomes of that are limitless.
Mm.
Like you can do things that you say you're going to do and follow through, which means you take more risks, you try new things, which just inevitably expands your reality in your life. So, doing things like that that may seem a little bit hard or may seem like you need to actually commit to something, they can be really, really transformational when it comes to changing your life in general.
I could not agree more. And the self-trust being like the huge piece, I think that you named. It's like trusting yourself, not letting life also pull you and waver you in other ways where maybe you had been pulled before,
Mm-hmm.
like consistently growing and testing that muscle. Like that's what happens over 75 days. And you did 75 hard over 3 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you've
Three.
been sober ever since. And in the meantime, too, don't forget, oh, you met your now fiance, soon to be husband, and have like cultivated a completely different business outside of corporate.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll infiltrate corporate soon, right? But we'll infiltrate that culture and shift them things. Um, so you're absolutely right. Like your life looks completely different after having committed to yourself and flexing that trust muscle over 75 days and then over the past 3 years, however many days that is, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
over 1,000 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
Yeah.
look where you are now. Because I could not stop thinking about the roofie experience that you had, Paige. And I'm just going to bring it up again.
Mm-hmm.
And in case no one's watched Off Campus, and not to give the whole show away, but the main character is you discover that she had been drugged at a high school party where she was just innocently, quote unquote. Um, and I say that because I don't like the phrase innocently necessarily for this, but she was just doing what high schoolers do, having a drink, and she got roofied and taken advantage of by some guy that she knew in her town where no one believed her
Mm-hmm.
with what happened. And she had to move away, go to school. And at this point, she's someone who felt like that was her first time. And she did a lot of work to regain access to her pleasure on her own.
Mm-hmm.
But while having a crush on some other guy, she wanted to be able to have and experience pleasure and an orgasm with him. She was like, I'm going to try this out with my friend. And the experience that they have was like very, very like interesting to watch as someone who, studies pleasure and all of that and just the human psychology about it all. And we had stopped recording, but then we came back on because we did not get to touch on this piece about using a substance to numb our head so that maybe we can access more of our body.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have more to say on that, I have probably so much to say, but yeah,
Yeah.
sober sex.
Sober sex. It's a huge part of the journey of cutting back on alcohol, I think, is that sexual intimacy. Because for so many of us, we are taught to use alcohol in order to access that sensuality and pleasure. And if we even think back to like in college where you experience some of your first sexual encounters, it's usually, after a party where everyone's drinking, or even if you do go on a date, you're usually drinking at dinner or going out to get drinks. And even, in my 20s, I experienced so much of this. When you would go on a date with someone for the first time, the typical go-to is going to get drinks at a bar and having wine or having cocktails. And I would go as far as to the point drinking, getting ready for dates because I was nervous. So a lot of clients that I work with will come in with that preconceived notion as well, that they need to drink before dates in order to tame their nerves. So transitioning from that into a more alcohol free lifestyle where you're not relying on alcohol for intimacy it can be very daunting. And a lot of people are scared for their first time to have sex sober.
Mm.
But the thing about that is that it's so much better when you're sober. People don't understand this. Pleasure is so much deeper when you are fully connected to your body and to your brain, which alcohol inhibits that connection. It
Mhm.
cuts us off from feeling not only like physical sensations because it numbs the central nervous system, but
Mhm.
it also disconnects us from those pleasure feelings in the brain and those emotions coming up. So it
Absolutely.
blows my mind.
Absolutely. I'm now thinking about my first orgasm experience, which was while I was high. And I remember needing drinks and weed to access that level of pleasure. But I think for me, it was like only because I had still so much shame around my sexuality to process. Like
Mm-hmm.
having sex before marriage was not acceptable by my family and
Yeah.
the culture that I was brought up in. So the fact that I was doing it was like, okay, I have to forget the fact that I'm doing this and I'm doing a shameful quote unquote behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and so at the same time, like I was stunting the pleasure capacity, but still, like it was such a weird, like it's a come down and a suppression of all feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was, I think, specifically helping with the shame, I thought.
Yeah.
And then I was like really grinding it out for the pleasure. And okay, great. I felt my first orgasm because my nervous system was suppressed enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, out of that relationship into a new one where I felt like I could be my full self and I had processed a lot of the shame and reclaimed all these pieces of my body. I didn't need alcohol or weed or any other type of drug. Like I could just be in my body,
Mm-hmm.
fully connected to each and every cell from head to toe
Mm-hmm.
and experience more of what people are, you know, I don't want it to I don't want to make a hierarchy for types of orgasm necessarily, but the one I had the first time was definitely not the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Totally. It's
I,
crazy to think that we like rely on it so heavily for that. Because I experienced very similar too. I grew up Catholic and I went to a Catholic high school, and it was all very shameful to have sex before marriage. And it's something that honestly I still work through today of some of those feelings of, feeling like it's wrong and allowing that to block me from
mm,
expressing fully the pleasure that can happen through intimacy. And I definitely used it in similar ways of like kind of numbing out that feeling that I was doing something wrong.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. The shame alchemy, I think, is so interesting, actually tying it back to alcohol and even thinking about the things that we got into because of alcohol. There's like the shame hangover of like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, what the fuck did I do last night?
Mm-hmm.
And then combine that with the shame of, oh, I was raised to believe that I shouldn't be having sex. Like I can think of one hookup in particular. I feel like it was in college. I've like blocked out this memory. I don't know why it's popping into me right now, but got wasted, hooked up with a guy, left the house the next morning and was like walking to my car or wherever. I forget who, if I got picked up or if I drove myself, but I was like
Walk of shame.
literally the fucking walk of shame. Walking over from even like the frat house in some basketball shorts and my heels.
Mm-hmm.
That
Oh
was
yeah.
so, you see all the girls going back to the store. Damn,
Yeah. I mean, it's even in the name,
it's in the name.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah. The shame alchemy is important. We got to transform that and
Yeah.
transform the culture around it for sure.
Yeah. And even just back to that, like after it is alchemized, that shame, and then not needing alcohol in order to feel confident in those situations and when
Yeah,
you're having sex. And then it
yeah.
becomes so much more enjoyable when you can just be yourself and you can do the things that you want to do rather than kind of performing or like putting on an act of what you think that you should be doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because don't forget, ladies, if you're listening and you're with, say, a male partner, for example, I feel like men really do want the true version of you. And so if you're showing up as a glazed over version, performative,
Mhm.
like they want to feel connected to you
Mhm.
during those types of experiences. So why not give them that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yes.
Before we get back to this conversation, I want to invite you into something brand new in the Being Better world. Alchemy August. Starting today and all month long throughout August, I'm sharing more about vaginal alchemy, a self paced journey for coming home to your pelvic bowl, your pleasure, your sensuality, and your body's wisdom. The doors are now open and you can join for $497 paid in full or 5 monthly payments of $111. When you sign up, you'll receive a vaginal alchemy intake form designed to offer guidance based on where you are right now. And for the first 10 women who decide to join, I'll personally create a customized vaginal alchemy map based on your intake, a bonus at no additional cost. If you've been feeling called to deepen your relationship with your body, your healing, your pleasure, this is your invitation. Head to the show notes to learn more and sign up for Vaginal Alchemy today. And now back to the episode. Okay, moving on. And you're having such a different type of like wedding experience too, which
Mhm.
I didn't forget.
Yes.
You want to talk about like how you're approaching this part of your life because this is also just like a huge life season where when you get married, there's, I mean, even the decision to get married and like what you even envisioned for your life. Did you think you would be getting married? And did you think you would be like here right now, sober, getting married and doing it in such a different way than where you've been a bridesmaid 11 freaking times? And I'm
Yes.
sure every wedding looked vaguely similar and the culture is similar,
Yeah.
where it's open bar, everyone's trashed by the end of it.
Mhm.
You're doing it different.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I could not have imagined that my life would look like it does today, just even 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Um, it has really shifted my lifestyle to be more health and wellness focused. It's shifted a lot of my relationships. Um, I have a lot of new people in my life now that I didn't know a few years ago, including you. People who are, just aligned with the type of life that I live now. And you mentioned it too, transitioning from a corporate role where I was working in corporate strategy and change management for a decade to now starting my own coaching business
Mm.
and focusing more online has been, one of the greatest joys of the journey. And I, during that time, called in my dream partner who is an absolute angel. He's everything that I could have ever wished for and more, and things that I didn't even know that I wanted in a partner.
Mm.
And it's so funny how it happened because he also is sober and for the same reasons, just doesn't drink by choice. And the craziest part is that we had actually stopped drinking around the same time. And we met 3 months after that.
Whoa.
And we didn't know that each other was sober because I had it on my profile. We met on Hinge and he didn't list it on his profile. So I wasn't sure, but he didn't have any pictures of him like drinking or partying. And we were having good conversation. So I thought, okay, this could be a good fit.
Mm.
And when we went on our first date, the waiter came to take our order and they asked if I would like anything to drink. And he stopped me and he said, "Oh, just so you know, I actually don't drink alcohol, but you're welcome to order anything. I totally don't care, like whatever you want." And I said,
Mm.
"Oh my gosh, I actually don't drink either."
Oh my gosh.
It
You
was
probably
like,
made his night that night.
yeah. And it was like one of the first things that we really bonded on, just how great we were
Yeah.
feeling and how we had both just given it up a few months earlier. And so he was really like in it with me. And I owe a lot of my transition that I made with my lifestyle to him, and having him be this wonderful influence on me as well. I really felt like I wasn't doing it alone, which made it so much easier.
Yeah.
Um, it was just absolutely wonderful. And so we always knew from the start that we wanted to create a life for ourselves that was very wellness focused and non-traditional, because we both have a lot of interests in, the spiritual, in the mindfulness world. I'm pretty woo woo. He's not as woo woo, but he's definitely super mindful. And we're always interested in just more self discovery and just getting the most out of life that we can together.
Mm.
And so we, over the last 3.5 years being together, we've cultivated a lot of those experiences for ourselves. Like our very first trip that we ever went on together was to Oaxaca, Mexico. And we did a temazcal together, which is
Oh my
a
gosh.
sweat lodge for those of you who don't know. It was a very intense, very spiritual experience. And we just love
Wow.
that kind of stuff. It brings us closer to not only each other, but to ourselves. And the more that we know ourselves and the deeper we love ourselves, the more we can love each other. So we've
Mm-hmm.
found that it's just this beautiful way of living. So we knew that when we wanted to get married, it would look very different from what we had seen personally and what we had experienced, which is the typical wedding culture of, a million different events, and the engagement party and the bridal showers and the couple showers and the bachelorette trips and everything revolving around alcohol, down to the wedding itself, which a lot of times, as you mentioned, I've been a bridesmaid 11 times. So I've been a
Yes.
lot of bridal suites, and it always starts with champagne in the morning, drinking at like 7 a.m. all the way until 3 p.m. when you're finally ready to take pictures, and following with, the drinks after the ceremony right into the actual reception. Typically there's an after party, usually an open bar. There's always people getting sloppy drunk. It's just part of the culture, and we don't really question it at all. But I had found myself in the middle of this sober, curious journey going to all these different weddings. So there were a few weddings at the beginning where I was doing all of that, and I was indulging and getting blackout drunk. And then I started cutting back a little bit. And I had a few weddings where maybe I would drink, at the welcome party, but I wouldn't drink at the actual wedding.
Mm.
And then it kind of slowly transitioned over time to where now I just go to weddings completely sober and can enjoy myself. And I've been to a few bachelorette trips sober. I've done all kinds of those festivities without drinking. And I found them to be much more enjoyable that way, of course, because I love my sober life. But it's just been so nice. And we knew that, like, we didn't want our wedding to be a space that enabled any of that, because that's not really what we get excited about. And though I still enjoy going to those events sober, I personally, for me, would like to do something a little bit different where it doesn't actually involve drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that instead of doing one big wedding where we were inviting all of our friends and family, we were going to do two different events. One was going to be a party with friends. There was a wellness day party, and we just had that actually last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We brought in a mobile sauna that would fit, I think, 10 people. It was huge.
Amazing.
We had a group cold plunge, so we could do contrast therapy and go back and forth. We had a DJ playing music, so that we could dance and just enjoy. And then we also had a barista and a coffee cart come that was serving like coffees, lattes, matchas. And then we had it catered with all of our favorite, like, healthy
Mm-hmm.
food. So it's just this really beautiful space where we were able to connect with our friends and celebrate and really feel like it was marking the milestone
Mm-hmm.
without having to go the traditional route of doing like a party in the evening that was more just centered around alcohol.
Freaking love it.
Mm-hmm.
I freaking love it. And then your wedding is coming up in where, yeah, talk me through what the wedding's gonna look like.
Yeah, so that was the first part, was the party with
The
friends. And
party,
then
yes.
the second part was or is upcoming the actual wedding ceremony. So we decided to do a very intimate, family only wedding that was going to be,
Mm.
that is going to be on the East Coast because my fiance is from there. So our family's coming in for a 3-day retreat. And we basically planned the entire weekend to be a wellness retreat instead of a wedding event.
I freaking love it, Paige. I'm like
Yes.
trying to pound on my desk, but don't want to make the computer shake. And the wind came in right as you were saying that, and I started getting chills in my body. And it's like, oh my God, I'm sure your family. I mean, I feel like we could obviously talk for ages about this particular piece, but like the reaction of your friends, your families to this transformation that you've had, like they, I would assume that some of them um, are faced with their own scenarios, like with their own actions and behaviors by
Mhm.
being in connection with you or knowing you, but also
Mhm.
maybe they've kind of sloughed off to the side a bit. But like with
Mhm.
family, is family noticing how amazing you look, feel to be around when you are now sober?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Like I said before, my parents have been through it with me,
Yeah.
having to pick me up from parties and seeing me totally at my worst. They're so proud of the way that I have changed. And they tell me literally every time I see them. And it makes me so happy to know that, they feel good about my lifestyle now. And they actually have shifted from, trying to tell me to slow down or cut back to actually now asking me for advice on things. And the biggest example of this is my dad. He used to drink a glass of wine pretty much every night with dinner. And he actually went sober for a full 3 months just to see what it would be like and how it would help his mental health. And he liked it so much that he hasn't fully gone back to drinking.
Mm.
He'll drink on occasion, usually just every once in a while, but he actually doesn't keep alcohol in the house anymore. He
Mm.
buys NA beers that he has now when he does want to drink. He'll have his NA Heineken that he loves. And he's tried a lot of different NA wines now, too. So it definitely has a ripple effect on the people in your immediate circle. My mom has definitely cut back on drinking as well. I've had plenty of friends come out and tell me, that they really find it inspiring the way that I've changed and trying to cut back on their own drinking. So it's been this really beautiful thing that has not only impacted me but all the people who are close to me too. And I've called in a lot of new friends and new people who are not drinking and who are sober as well. So that's been really wonderful to experience.
I really love that. I love hearing about your parents and these friends kind of coming out of the woodworks. I feel like they're people, I think people really battle with this curiosity, even if it's
Yeah.
just a curiosity in silence, because they are maybe afraid of all of the connection that they have had via the culture of drinking.
Hmm.
And whether that's with like family that they really love or friends, whatever, for as long as they've had them. And to change sometimes means you are letting this version of you die.
Yeah.
And it can be really, really scary. And I'm wondering if you had any encouraging words for that person who is battling with the curiosity, but not able yet or not wanting to. Maybe they do want to take this next step into um, trying on sober living for
Hmm.
a time. Like
Hmm.
what would be your words of encouragement or like a first step that they could take on?
Yeah, I think the first step is really just awareness. It's
Mm.
very simple. And it's becoming more aware of why you drink, when you drink, who you drink around, the different settings that you drink in, maybe even what time of day it is when you drink. And once you start to get a better understanding of the why, it starts to sink in a little bit. So we can't change anything that is not in conscious awareness. So we first have to bring it to the conscious level from just these automatic patterns and habits. And the best way I found to do that is through self reflection, whether that's journaling, whether that's leaving yourself voice notes. It could even be through conversation, maybe with a therapist or with a friend. But once you start to actually realize the why behind your drinking, you can't really unsee it. And once you have that ability to see it, you can start to change some of those habits and patterns. And I would say the next big step would be to actually taking a break, because that shows you what life could look like when you start diverting some of that energy and attention from alcohol and alcohol related activities into things that you are truly excited about, passionate about, things that light you up, things that you enjoy doing. And that could be anywhere from a 1 month break to my recommendation, which is a 3 month break, because it really gives you enough space and time to experience different highs and lows of life without depending on alcohol.
I really love that advice for sure. And I think that was exactly the kind of route I took, just
Mm-hmm.
examining first for a little bit, like why is this and where is this happening and the
Mm-hmm.
who. Um, and I appreciate that 1 month break advice, but then the 3 month break for sure
Mm-hmm.
is it feels long. Like 75 days even for the challenge that we did, 75 days feels like a marathon in some cases, but you really do feel the shifts. Like
Yeah.
30 days is just, ugh, that's like a drop in the bucket um
Mm-hmm.
in someone's life, right? But 3 months really then I think it's almost like a big U-turn.
Yeah, it gives you that opportunity to actually solidify some of the habits, the new habits that you have around taking care of yourself, coping mechanisms, dealing with any sort of sadness or grief. When you're just taking a short break, you can easily bounce back to where you were before, because you only practiced a certain habit maybe for 20 to 30 days rather than a full 3 months where it just starts to become part of your daily or weekly routine.
Yeah, yeah. And I would almost, just thinking ahead, I would almost argue that there are certain 3 month periods that may even be harder than others. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like dry Jan through March even is pretty easy. Everyone's on this wellness kick and wanting to be their best self. So I feel like getting into Q3 or four here, it's it's the time of the year where everyone's getting back in the swing of things, maybe with school and stuff, but it's also where a majority of our holidays are,
Mm-hmm.
where that culture, going back to the corporate culture, is there, and people go on vacations and they want to let loose and they do all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to plant that seed. I don't know if you've seen that being extra challenging for people, but maybe that's where you come in, as a coach that they can work with for 3 months and in becoming her, if you're, yeah, into that and want to work with you. What does that look like? Can you, or how does someone get started working with you? Like, what would you advise them to do? Because I also, anyone listening who's like very, very curious about this and wants to investigate, I feel like you give so much free information and tips on TikTok and Instagram for specifically, I think, like dating and socializing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these are things I never had would have considered um thinking about, like, but I definitely experienced it and I just whatever navigated it my own because I didn't know you back then when I was doing that really. And trying to figure out why is this so hard? To like be sober in these certain scenarios.
Yeah.
So anyone who like wants to dig into your content there, I definitely advise you to do that. But yeah, what is the first step of wanting to work with you one on one, or are you doing some group stuff? Are you doing any challenges coming up?
Yeah. So one on one is my signature framework for 3 months. We work together, and it's really a space to figure out what your best relationship with alcohol is going to look like. It's for some people very easy to stop drinking, and for other people, it's really hard. And that's going to just depend on how you're currently using alcohol, kind of your personality traits, the social circle that you run in, and really how you're using alcohol. And I have a lot of people that come to me and want to just cut back, which is something that I love helping people with, because I
Mm,
take a very like harm reduction model to the work that I do. I'm
mm,
not an all or nothing gal. So if you want to just start cutting back, I'm definitely here to help with that. And I've had plenty of clients come through and successfully do that and be able to have a healthy relationship with alcohol and be able to just enjoy a drink every once in a while rather than feeling like they rely on it for socializing, for relaxing, for celebrating, all the things that we're kind of ingrained to use alcohol for. But it's funny too, because some people will come in wanting to just cut back. And then after taking the 3 month break and doing all the inner work together, they come out the other side not wanting to drink anymore.
classic, classic.
Classic, which is what happened to me. And that's my story. I never thought that I would be someone who would be sober. So I'm very open to all sorts of journeys. And I know people all are on their own timelines. But I will say having a coach in your corner is the most effective thing you can do. If you are serious about making a change and you want to actually make some moves, get a coach, whether it's me or someone else. Even just working with a therapist can be great if they have a specialization in that. But it really holds you accountable to a higher standard and allows you to take a look at your patterns in a deeper way and have them reflected back to you from this third party who doesn't have skin in the game when it comes to your relationship with, your family and your mom or your dad or, your friend circle. Like I will tell you how it is and, work together through those triggers and those challenges. Because that can be some of the hardest parts about this journey is your close circle, the people who see you all the time, who may judge you the most for it, who may have the most questions about it. So, really having that coach in your corner to help you through those times is going to be incredibly impactful.
Mm, thank you for reminding me even of that. Like, oh, this is why I have a movement coach. This is why I have a business coach. Like, because these are the hard things that we need help with. And like
Mm-hmm.
helping solidify the new identity, whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
that we're wanting to change and shift and make happen in our own lives.
Yeah,
That was so amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Do you have any last words or do you want to share where people can reach out to you and find you? Obviously, everything will be linked in the show notes, but if you have a preference on where
yeah,
people you want people to go, let us know.
definitely. Um, my final words would be you don't have to hit a rock bottom in order to want better for yourself.
Mm,
A lot of people think that when it comes to alcohol, if they are not waking up and drinking every morning, that they don't have a problem. And that's absolutely not true. You can have problematic drinking without showing signs of substance dependence or alcoholism. And I
mm,
think so many people have it wrong when they think about wanting to actually do better for themselves, maybe cut back or stop drinking altogether. They think that they have to have some sort of label or they have to go to AA in order to do that. And that's just not going to be the case for everyone. And there's no shame on the people that do need that support. And I think it's wonderful. AA has done so much amazing work in this world. And I have personally a lot of friends who have been through that. And it's incredibly impactful for those people that need that level of support. But just because you don't label yourself as that doesn't mean that you can't take another step in the journey and stop drinking. And that's something that I really want to become more normalized in the world that we are living in today.
mm. I really again appreciate that message.
Mm-hmm.
1000%.
Yeah. And for those that want to find me, I'm at sober_caliente on Instagram and TikTok, where I'm super active. I'm also on Substack. That weekly newsletter that Brittany mentioned is on Substack, so you can find me there. And yeah, I'll be open to talking to anyone if you have questions or you've gone through your own experience. I just love to hear from people and anyone who resonates with the work.
Yes, yes. Let us know. Leave a comment wherever you listen, if this hit you any way, anyhow, and let us know what your story is. I'd love to hear that too, actually. I'm so curious if this, yeah, piques anyone's interest and curiosity of taking different steps in their life. So thank you again, Paige, for being here. I so appreciate you. Thank you for sharing all the nitty gritties. and just like the blessings also that have come through, and how you're really a shining example of what it is to be her,
Oh,
your highest self.
thank you,
Yeah.
Brittany. This was so
Yeah.
fun. I feel like so much good combo, and thank you for all the wonderful questions and allowing this space for me to share my story.
Of course. Of course. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening and for placing your finger on the pelvic pulse. I'm Brittany Ellers. The music for this podcast was created by Just Tech, and I'm grateful you're here breathing this conversation in with me. You're invited to stay connected by following the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen, and by sharing it with someone you love. Beyond the podcast, there are 2 free spaces waiting for you: the Arousal Anatomy Adventure and my private podcast, The Pool of Presence, both designed to support you in coming back into your body and listening to what's real right now. You'll find everything linked in the show notes. Let your curiosity lead you and enter wherever you feel drawn. It's an honor to walk alongside you.